Remember how week one went. Week one was a game in which the defense played great. They didn't have Chris Jones and Travis Kelce in that game, but the defense played great, and the Chiefs made mistakes. A drop pass leads to a pick six, and yet somehow, some way in that Lions game, the Chiefs still had a chance to win on the final drive, but there was what? A key drop or two. Last night, defense was incredible. Offense actually in the first half, not too bad. Second half, no points yet again.
For the third straight game.
Third straight game. More red zone turnovers, including one from your star tight end, Travis Kelce. And yet, because of your defense, you still, on the last drive, what ended up basically being the last drive of the game, had a chance to win. But what happened? Two drops, one most notably from Marquez Valdez Scantling.
I'm sorry.
MVS. Or as Twitter was calling him yesterday, MVS. Look, that was a repeat of week one, man. It was a repeat of week one, and the second half offense is who this football team is, isn't it?
Okay, so I'm not willing to go as far as they're just, because like saying the second half offense is who they is all they, or who they are is all they do is turn the ball over, drop passes, and score 0 points.
Is that not what they do in the second half, Cody? You just told me a second ago. You're right. The second half offense the last 3 games.
Yeah.
0 points, 4 turnovers in 15 drives, 0 points, 4 turnovers. 13 fourth quarter points since week 3.
It's embarrassing. I can't even be bothered to talk about these receivers anymore. They suck. They're terrible. All the concerns, and there's no, like, I get it. If you want to be the I told you so guy from the offseason, you can be. Certainly there were plenty of people. I remember sitting here and being like, well, this might be the deepest wide receiver unit in Mahomes' career. That was a stupid freaking thing to say. That was so dumb. They're not deep. Deep in what? Being terrible? Yeah, they're 1 through 7 and sucks ass. That's a slightly different conversation. MVS has 14 catches on the year. Sky Moore can't even get a catch. So he's out on the field as much as MVS. He's not even catching the ball. Like, I mean, it is a bad unit. I can't believe it is this, because the thing that stuns me is, how is it this much worse when it's only Juju Smith-Schuster? He was a 900-yard receiver last year. Rashee Rice ended up being a 700-yard receiver this year. What is this chasm of difference between the talent last year and the year before?
It's one, MVS has regressed. He's having a worse season by far than he did a season ago. The other part is last year they actually were not penalized all that much compared to where they typically are as an Andy Reid coach team. This year they're getting penalized all over the place, whether it's holding calls, false starts, crop back up again. Last night with Jawan Taylor, early on in that football game, Donovan Smith had a rough night, to say the least. And it's the turnovers. It's the red zone turnovers. And look, the focus is going to be on MVS, and understandably so. I mean, that was pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. If you're going to be part of this football team, that's the one thing you have to do. If you're not going to be a 900-yard receiver and you're just going to be the deep threat guy, then you got to catch the freaking football in that moment, all right? So he shouldn't be on the field if he's not capable of catching those. And I had some Green Bay Packer colleagues, friends, acquaintances, whatever you want to call them, text me last night that work up in Green Bay, and they're like, yeah, man, we saw him drop like 7 of those in his time in Green Bay. So that's who he's been as an NFL player, dropping wide open passes. Aaron Rodgers can relate to Patrick Mahomes' frustrations last night. But it's the turnovers as well. We can focus on MVS, but it's the red zone turnovers. Your 2 best players on this team, and Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, or Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, I'm sorry, had the 2 big turnovers that put you in a spot to where you needed that catch from MVS, right? Like, that's what's frustrating and why I said it's reminded me of the Lions game. All the mistakes that were made, everybody wanted to focus on Tony's drop at the end of the Lions game, and I get it. Everybody wants to focus on MVS's drop. But, man, they had their defense getting multiple stops against the Eagles last night in the third quarter, multiple chances to go up 2 scores, and they couldn't because of turnovers.
Oh, that's a huge issue. It was an issue last year and seemingly eventually solved itself. But no, not again this time. They could have won. I know that people hate this. I'm not saying they lost the game. They deserve to lose it. They absolutely should have won that game. I mean, no doubt. That's where the similarities between this and the Detroit game lie. That was their game. They were in control. They controlled the action. 80% of the game. And then at the moments in which they needed people to step up the most, because I can nitpick, like the MVS one is the most egregious because it was at the end for as much as you screwed up, but the Travis Kelce one cost him just as much. They'd have been inside the 10-yard line. They score a touchdown there. They go up 2 scores, and this whole damn game's over 2. So Kelce has to wear that one, just like MVS has to wear his. And Kelce's, that was one of the worst games I've seen Kelce play in a very long time. I don't know if it was lack of focus, frustration, energy. I'm not sure which one it was. I haven't seen him play a game that poor in a while. But the whole unit is a mess. Justin Watson had, like, one of the drives, like, I went back through the second half. I'm like, okay, were they that bad in the second half on drives? No, they're not as bad as you're thinking just because they got 0 points. 2 drives stunk. Okay, 2 were bad. 2 were quick punts, and 1 was like a Creed penalty that ended up being a quick 3 and out. 1 was a touchdown drive, but Travis Kelce fumbled it, or at least a field goal drive. The other, again, could have been a field goal drive. They're on the 39-yard line, and Justin Watson can't hold on to a first down catch that ends that drive. And then we can talk about that later, punt for whatever dumbass reason that was. Okay, then they punt, and then a third drive was the last one, where Patrick Mahomes went 4 for 9 for 25 yards and looked as good as he had all season. I swear to God, he was dotting people. And it didn't matter because nobody could hold on to the football.
Yeah, they lead the league in drops. It's 27 now, including the 4th and 25 drop. It was 26, the stat one on the screen. But then 4th and 25, that ball was in the hands of Justin Watson. He drops it, so it's 27 drops on the season. And yeah, Cody, I mean, you can list off the things that they did to put them in position to win. Sure, right? The Chiefs had 7 more first downs. They had 98 more yards. They ran 20 more plays. They had 4 more sacks. A.J. Brown, another number 1 wide receiver, held to just 8 receiving yards. Jalen Hurts didn't throw a touchdown. But the margin of error, I used to be able to come on this show over the last 3.5, soon to be 4 years since you and I have been doing the show together, Cody. We used to be able to come on this show and say, you know what? All these turnovers, all these mistakes, because it's Mahomes and it's this Chiefs offense, they can just overcome things that most teams can't.
Yeah.
The fact is they cannot. They're no different than any other team anymore. They're not. So you're right, the move the ball and all that. The difference is now your star players, because of the inefficiencies elsewhere on offense, when you're asking Justin Watson to be a number 1 wide receiver when he's a number 4 wide receiver. The dude had 11 targets. I don't even put it much on Justin Watson. Guy had 11 targets. We're talking about Justin Watson here. No business having 11 targets. That speaks to the rest of the wide receiver room.
Yeah. So it makes me less mad at Justin Watson and more mad at the other guys.
Sure. And so when Travis Kelce has opportunities, though, and Patrick Mahomes have opportunities, because his pick was bad in the red zone, when those guys make mistakes, this team is simply not good enough on offense to overcome that anymore. In the past, when they get the ball and they need to go 90 yards with 2 minutes or roughly 2:20 to go, we're all thinking, oh, Mahomes got this. Not anymore. We have to shift our thinking, not with this offense. This is who they are. Now, why are they so good in the first half and trash in the second half? We can explore that throughout the show today.
Scripted
because
plays, I guess?
Right, because they're actually the second best offense in the first half. They really are. Second best offense points per game in the first half.
Yeah, they're a 34-point per game offense in the first half and a 10-point game per game
dead last
in the second.
Dead last in the second half. They're dead last in the second half, 5.3 points per game. The Cardinals, who are 2-9, are averaging more points per game in the second half, 6. The Raiders, who the Chiefs are going to play on Sunday, by the way, who are 5-6.
Sweet, someone just as bad as that.
Who are 5-6, are averaging 6.8 points per game in the second half. And the Chiefs are worse than both of them.
Mm-hmm. But close to the Raiders, who they get to play this weekend. I hope that, at least I trust that the Chiefs will still win this, because it would be horrifying for them to reopen some dumb conversation about the division just because they lost to the Raiders this weekend. And it would only put them a game back. I don't think they're going to do that. But yes, it is a huge, offensively, the wide receivers are the biggest problem by a mile. And yeah, the tackle struggled last night. That's one of the best defensive lines in football. I can justify a little tackle struggle against one of the best defensive lines in football. My problem is that going into that game, Patrick Mahomes had said, this is kind of nice because we can see who plays big under the lights. And every single wide receiver was a mess. Justin Watson, for as many targets and catches that he did have, and he led the wide receivers, he had 3 drops himself. I know some of them don't get called drops because it's like errors in baseball and they're nice to you. But that 4th and 25 ball that Patrick Mahomes dotted between his hands, that's a drop. Mm-hmm. You got to catch that, especially considering the other ones that the unit dropped. I don't know if this just means T. Higgins is a stone cold lock to be a Chiefs wide receiver next year, but for the first time in a long time, I'm mad at Brett Veach because this plan stunk. This wide receiver plan, gross. You thought I'm going to make MVS the number one wide receiver and pair it up with Sky and Tony, and it's an awful plan.
They completely miscalculated the progression and belief that their coaching staff was going to be able to bring these guys along. Because I'll go back to week one. In that game, we're like, it's week one. They got time to figure this out, which, by the way, I think was still accurate at that time because it was week one of the damn season. But it's week 12 now. And if we were to go through every single wide receiver, let's start with MVS. Has he gotten better, stayed the same, or worse?
Worse.
He's gotten worse. Sky Moore, about the same, right? He's not really doing anything. He's not doing anything. He's the same.
He had 200 yards last year. He's just getting more opportunities.
He's
the
same player.
He's technically going to have more yards, but he's the same player.
Rashee Rice, all right, he's improved. He's the only guy you can say is improved.
From nothing?
Kadarius Toney.
Worse.
Kadarius Toney, the same or worse. I mean, he needs to continue to get more playing time, but that's a whole other conversation later.
Rashee Rice has improved, but he wasn't even on the field.
Right. Well, he was. No, so that's the misleading thing. He actually had the second most snaps of any wide receiver last night. He just didn't get targeted.
It's just they don't do it the way other wide receivers. I know we're going to talk about these guys in a little bit, but just real quick, if you're curious if Rashee Rice is on the field enough, even though he was on the field the second most out of all the wide receivers, the answer is no. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown were on the field for their offenses yesterday, 97% of the snaps. Both of them. Rashee Rice was on the field for less than 50. That's not how the Chiefs don't operate that way. Well, they got to start.
Because
this operation doesn't work.
No doubt. Now, I will say, the Eagles, the one thing to keep in mind, remember we had a conversation with Ross Tucker yesterday. Because Dallas Goedert's out, they went way more 4 wide receiver sets, and so they had more wide receivers on the field than they typically do even in Philly last night. So I don't know how – I would have to go look. I don't know if that's how Philly normally operates. But yes, the Chiefs start. Remember how the Chiefs started the game? They had three tight ends, I guess, at one point in time on the field.
Didn't work on the first drive.
Reddick got the best of Jawan Taylor, to say the least. We're going to talk about the wide receivers more. I was just going through them, though, right? I mean, none of them, other than Rashee Rice, just because of more playing time, have improved. They've either stayed the same or regressed. Since week 1, it's week 12 now. That's why we talk about this football team and the position they're in, and they're the worst second-half offense in the NFL.